Chapter 19. The summer went that way. I do not remember much about the days, except that they were hot, and that there were many victories in the papers. I was very healthy, and my legs healed quickly, so that it was not very long after I was first on crutches before I was through with them and walking with a cane. Then I started treatments at the Ospedale Maggiore for bending the knees, mechanical treatments, baking in a box of mirrors with violet rays, massage, and baths. I went over there afternoons and afterward stopped at the cafe and had a drink and read the papers. I did not roam around the town, but wanted to get home to the hospital from the cafe. All I wanted was to see Catherine. The rest of the time I was glad to kill. Mostly I slept in the mornings and in the afternoons. Sometimes I went to the races and late to the mechanotherapy treatments. Sometimes I stopped in at the Anglo American Club and sat in a deep leather cushioned chair in front of the window and read the magazines. They would not let us go out together when I was off crutches because it was unseemly for a nurse to be seen unchaperoned with a patient who did not look as though he needed attendance. So we were not together much in the afternoons, although sometimes we could go out to dinner if Ferguson went along. Miss Van Campen had accepted the status that we were great friends because she got a great amount of work out of Catherine. She thought Catherine came from very good people and that prejudiced prejudiced her in her favor finally. Miss Van Campen admired family very much and came from an excellent family herself. The hospital was quite busy, too, and that kept her occupied. It was a hot summer, and I knew many people in Milan, but always was anxious to get back home to the hospital as soon as the afternoon was over. At the front, they were advancing on the Carso. They had taken Cook, across from Plava, and were taking the Banziza plateau. The west front did not sound so good. It looked as though the war were going on for a long time. We were in the war now, but I thought it would take a year to get any great amount of troops over and train them for combat. Next year would be a bad year, or a good year maybe. The Italians were using up an awful amount of men. I did not see how it could go on. Even if they took all the Benziza and Monte San Gabriel, there were plenty of mountains beyond for the Austrians. I had seen them. All the highest mountains were beyond. On the Carso, they were going forward, but there were marshes and swamps down by the sea. Napoleon would have whipped the Austrians on the plains. He never would have fought them in the mountains. He would have let them come down and whipped them around Verona. Still, nobody was whipping anyone on the Western Front. Perhaps wars weren't won anymore. Maybe they went on forever. Maybe it was another 100 Years' War. I put the paper back on the rack and left the club. I went down the steps carefully and walked up the Via Manzoni. Outside the Grand Hotel, I met old Myers and his wife getting out of the carriage. They were coming back from the races. She was a big busted woman in black satin. He was short and old, with a white mustache, and walked flat footed with a cane. How do you do? How do you do? She shook hands. Hello, said Myers. How were the races? Fine. They were just lovely. I had 3 winners. How did you do? I asked Myers. All right. I had a winner. I never know how he does, Mrs. Myers said. He never tells me. I do all right, Myers said. He was being cordial. You ought to come out. While he talked, you had the impression that he was not looking at you or that he mistook you for someone else. I will, I said. I'm coming up to the hospital to see you, Mrs. Myers said. I have some things for my boys. You're all my boys. You certainly are my dear boys. They'll be glad to see you. Those dear boys. You too. You're one of my boys. I have to get back, I said. You give my love to all those dear boys. I've got lots of things to bring. I have some fine marsala and cakes. Goodbye, said Myers. You come around to the Galleria. You know where my table is. We're all there every afternoon. I went on up the street. I wanted to buy something at the Cova to take to Catherine. Inside at the Cova, I bought a box of chocolate, and while the girl wrapped it up, I walked over to the bar. There were a couple of British and some visitors. I had a martini alone, paid for it, picked up the box of chocolate at the outside counter, and walked on home toward the hospital. Outside the little bar, up the street from the Scala, there were some people I knew, a vice consul, 2 fellows who studied singing, and Ettore Moretti, an Italian from San Francisco who was in the Italian army. I had a drink with them. One of the singers was named Ralph Simmons, and he was singing under the name of Enrico del Credo. I never knew how well he could sing, but he was always on the point of something very big happening. He was fat and looked shop-worn around the nose and mouth, as though he had hay fever. He had come back from singing in Piacenza. He had sung Tosca, and it had been wonderful. Of course, you've never heard me sing, he said. When will you sing here? I'll be at the Scala in the fall. I'll bet they throw the benches at you, Ettore said. Did you hear how they threw the benches at him in Medina? It's a damned lie. They threw the benches at him, Ettore said. I was there. I threw 6 benches myself. You're just a wop from Frisco. He can't pronounce Italian, Ettore said. Everywhere he goes, they throw the benches at him. Piacenza's the toughest house to sing in the north of Italy, the other tenor said. Believe me, that's a tough little house to sing. This tenor's name was Edgar Saunders, and he sang under the name of Edoardo Giovanni. I'd like to be there to see them throw the benches at you, Ettore said. You can't sing Italian. He's a nut, said Edgar Saunders. All he knows how to say is throw benches. That's all they know how to do when you two sing, Ettore said. Then when you go to America, you'll tell about your triumphs at the Scala. They wouldn't let you get back by the first note at the Scala. They wouldn't let you get by the first note at the Scala. I'll sing at the Scala, Simmons said. I'm going to sing Tosca in October. We'll go, won't we, Mac? Ettore said to the vice consul. They'll need somebody to protect them. Maybe the American army will be there to protect them, the vice consul said. Do you want another drink, Simmons? You want a drink, Saunders? All right, said Saunders. I hear you're going to get the silver medal, Ettore said to me. What kind of citation are you going to get? I don't know. I don't know I'm going to get it. You're going to get it? Oh boy, the girls at the Cova will think you're fine then. They'll all think you killed 200 Austrians or captured a whole trench by yourself. Believe me, I got to work for my decorations. How many have you got, Ettore? Asked the vice consul. He's got everything, Simmons said. He's the boy they're running the war for. I've got the bronze twice and 3 silver medals, said Ettore. But the papers on only one have come through. What's the matter with the others? Asked Simmons. The action wasn't successful, said Ettore. When the action isn't successful, they hold up all the medals. How many times have you been wounded, Ettore? 3 times, bad. I got 3 wound stripes. See? He pulled his sleeve around. The stripes were parallel silver lines on a black background. Sewed to the cloth on the sleeve, about 8 inches below the shoulder. You got one too, Ettore said to me. Believe me, they're fine to have. I'd rather have them than medals. Believe me, boy, when you get 3, you've got something. You only get 1 for a wound that puts you 3 months in the hospital. Where were you wounded, Ettore? Asked the vice consul. Ettore pulled up his sleeve. Here. He showed the deep, smooth red scar. Here on my leg. I can't show you that because I got pooties on. And in the foot. There's dead bone in my foot. That stinks right now. Every morning I take new little pieces out, and it stinks all the time. What hit you? Asked Simmons. A hand grenade. One of those potato mashers. It just blew the whole side of my foot off. You know, those potato mashers. He turned to me. Sure. I saw the son of a bitch throw it, Ettore said. It knocked me down, and I thought I was dead, all right. But those damn potato mashers haven't got anything in them. I shot the son of a bitch with my rifle. I always carry a rifle, so they can't tell I'm an officer. How did he look? Asked Simmons. That was the only one he had, Ettore said. I don't know why he threw it. I guess he always wanted to throw one. He never saw any real fighting, probably. I shot the son of a bitch, all right. How did he look when you shot him? Simmons asked. Hell, how should I know? Said Ettore. I shot him in the belly. I was afraid I'd miss him if I shot him in the head. How long have you been an officer, Ettore? I asked. 2 years. I'm going to be a captain. How long have you been a lieutenant? Going on 3 years. You can't be a captain because you don't know the Italian language well enough, Ettore said. You can talk, but you can't read and write well enough. You got to have an education to be a captain. Why don't you go in the American army? Maybe I will. I wish to God I could. Oh boy, how much does a captain get, Mac? I don't know exactly. Around $250, I think. Jesus Christ, what I could do with $250. You better get in the American Army quick, Fred. See if you can't get me in. All right. I can command a company in Italian. I could learn it in English, easy. You'd be a general, said Simmons. No, I don't know enough to be a general. A general's got to know a hell of a lot. You guys think there ain't anything to war. You ain't got brains enough to be a second-class corporal. Thank God I don't have to be, Simmons said. Maybe you will if they round up all you slackers. Oh boy, I'd like to have you two in my platoon. Mac, too. I'd make you my orderly, Mac. You're a great boy, Ettore, Mac said. But I'm afraid you're a militarist. I'll be a colonel before the war's over, Ettore said. If they don't kill you. They won't kill me. He touched the stars at his collar with his thumb and forefinger. See me do that? We always touch our stars if anybody mentions getting killed. Let's go, Sim, said Saunders, standing up. All right. So long, I said. I have to go too. It was 5:45 by the clock inside the bar. Ciao, Ettore. Ciao, Fred, said Ettore. That's pretty fine you're going to get the silver medal. I don't know I'll get it. You'll get it all right, Fred. I heard you were going to get it all right. Well, so long, I said. keep out of trouble, Tori. Don't worry about me. I don't drink and I don't run around. I'm no boozer and whorehound. I know what's good for me. So long, I said. I'm glad you're going to be promoted captain. I don't have to wait to be promoted. I'm going to be a captain for merit of war, you know? 3 stars with the crossed swords and crown above. That's me. Good luck. Good luck. When you going back to the front? Pretty soon. Well, I'll see you around. So long. So long. Don't take any bad nickels. I walked on down a back street that led to a crosscut to the hospital. Tori was 23. He had been brought up by an uncle in San Francisco and was visiting his father and mother in Torino. When war was declared, when war was declared, he had a sister who had been sent to America with him at the time to live with the uncle who would graduate from normal school this year. He was a legitimate hero who bored everyone he met. Catherine could not stand him. We have heroes too, she said, but usually, darling, they're much quieter. I don't mind him. I wouldn't mind him if he wasn't so conceited and didn't bore me and bore me and bore me. He bores me. You're sweet to say so, darling, but you don't need to. You can picture him at the front, and you know he's useful, but he's so much the type of boy I don't care for. I know. You're awfully sweet to know, and I try and like him, but he's a dreadful, dreadful boy, really. He said this afternoon he was going to be a captain. I'm glad, said Catherine. That should please him. Wouldn't you like me to have some more exalted rank? No, darling. I only want you to have enough rank so that we're admitted to the better restaurants. That's just the rank I have. You have a splendid rank. I don't want you to have any more rank. It might go to your head. Oh, darling, I'm awfully glad you're not conceited. I'd have married you even if you were conceited. It's very restful to have a husband who's not conceited. We were talking softly out on the balcony. The moon was supposed to rise, but there was a mist over the town, and it did not come up, and in a little while it started to drizzle, and we came in. Outside the mist turned to rain, and in a little while it was raining hard, and we heard it drumming on the roof. I got up and stood at the door to see if it was raining in, but it wasn't, so I left the door open. Who else did you see? Catherine asked. Mr. and Mrs. Myers. They're a strange lot. He's supposed to have been in the penitentiary at home. They let him out to die. And he lived happily in Milan forever after. I don't know how happily. Happily enough after jail, I should think. She's bringing some things here. She brings splendid things. Were you her dear boy? One of them. You are all her dear boys, Catherine said. She prefers the dear boys. Listen to it rain. It's raining hard. And you'll always love me, won't you? Yes. And the rain won't make any difference. No. That's good because I'm afraid of the rain. Why? I was sleepy. Outside, the rain was falling steadily. I don't know, darling. I've always been afraid of the rain. I like it. I like to walk in it, but it's very hard on loving. I'll love you always. I'll love you in the rain and in the snow and in the hail. And what else is there? I don't know. I guess I'm sleepy. Go to sleep, darling, and I'll love you no matter how it is. You're not really afraid of the rain, are you? Not when I'm with you. Why are you afraid of it? I don't know. Tell me. Don't make me. Tell me. No. Tell me. All right. I'm afraid of the rain because sometimes I see me dead in it. No. And sometimes I see you dead in it. That's more likely. No, it's not, darling, because I can keep you safe. I know I can. But nobody can help themselves. Please stop it. I don't want you to get scotch and crazy tonight. We won't be together much longer. No, but I am scotch and crazy. But I'll stop it. It's all nonsense. Yes, it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. It's only nonsense. I'm not afraid of the rain. I'm not afraid of the rain. Oh, oh, God, I wish I wasn't. She was crying. I comforted her, and she stopped crying. But outside it kept on raining. Chapter 20. One day in the afternoon, we went to the races. Ferguson went too, and Crowell Rogers, the boy who had been wounded in the eyes of the explosion of the shell nose cap. The girls dressed to go after lunch, while Crowell and I sat on the bed in his room and read the past performances of the horses and the predictions in the racing paper. Crowell's head was bandaged, and he did not care much about the races, but read the racing paper constantly and kept track of all the horses for something to do. He said the horses were a terrible lot, but they were all the horses we had. Old Myers liked him and gave him tips. Myers won on nearly every race, but disliked to give tips because it brought down the prices. The racing was very crooked. Men who had been ruled off the turf everywhere else were racing in Italy. Myers's information was good, but I hated to ask him because sometimes he did not answer, and always you could see it hurt him to tell you. But he felt obligated to tell us for some reason, and he hated less to tell Crowell. Crowell's eyes had been hurt. One was hurt badly, and Myers had trouble with his eyes, and so he liked Crowell. Myers never told his wife what horses he was playing, and she won or lost, mostly lost, and talked all the time. We four drove out to San Siro in an open carriage. It was a lovely day, and we drove out through the park and out along the tramway and out of town where the road was dusty. There were villas with iron fences and big overgrown gardens and ditches with water flowing and green vegetable gardens with dust on the leaves. We could look out across the plain and see farmhouses and the rich, green farms with their irrigation ditches and the mountains to the north. There were many carriages going into the racetrack, and the men at the gate let us in without cards because we were in uniform. We left the carriage, bought programs, and walked across the infield and then across the smooth, thick turf of the course to the paddock. The grandstands were old and made of wood, and the betting booths were under the stands and in a row out near the stables. There was a crowd of soldiers along the fence in the infield. The paddock was fairly well filled with people, and they were walking the horses around in a ring under the trees behind the grandstand. We saw people and knew. We saw people we knew and got chairs for Ferguson and Catherine and watched the horses. They went around, one after the other, their heads down, the grooms leading them. One horse, a purplish black, Crowell swore was dyed that color. We watched him, and it seemed possible. He had only come out just before the bell rang to saddle. We looked him up in the program from the number on the groom's arm, and it was listed a black gelding named Japalac. The race was for horses that had never won a race worth 1,000 lyre or more. Catherine was sure his color had been changed. Ferguson said she could not tell. I thought he looked suspicious. We all agreed we ought to back him and pooled 100 lyre. The odds sheets showed he would pay 35 to 1. Corral went over and bought the tickets while we watched the jockeys ride around once more and then go out under the trees to the track and gallop slowly up to the turn where the start was to be. We went up in the grandstand to watch the race. They had no elastic barrier at San Siro then, and the starter lined up all the horses. It looked very small way up the track, and then sent them off with a crack of his long whip. They came past us with the black horse well in front and on the turn. He was running away from the others. I watched them on the far side with the glasses and saw the jockey fighting to hold him in, but he could not hold him. And when they came around the turn and into the stretch, the black horse was 15 lengths ahead of the others. He went way on up and around the turn after the finish. Isn't it wonderful? Catherine said. We'll have over 3,000 lyre. He must be a splendid horse. I hope his color doesn't run, Crowell said, before they pay off. He was really a lovely horse, Catherine said. I wonder if Mr. Mayers backed him. Do you have the winner? I called to Mayers. He nodded. I didn't, Mrs. Mayers said. Who did you children bet on? Japalac. Really? He's 35 to 1. We liked his color. I didn't. I thought he looked seedy. He told me not to back him. He won't pay much, Myers said. He's marked 35 to 1 in the quotes, I said. He won't pay much at the last minute, Myers said. They put a lot of money on him. Who? Kempton and the boys. You'll see. He won't pay 2 to 1. Then we won't get 3,000 lyre, Catherine said. I don't like this crooked racing. We'll get 200 lyre. That's nothing. Doesn't do us any good. I thought we were going to get 3,000. It's crooked and disgusting, Ferguson said. Of course, said Catherine. If it hadn't been crooked, we'd never have backed him at all, but I would have liked the 3,000 lyre. Let's go down and get drunk and get a drink and see what they pay, Crowell said. We went out to where they posted the numbers and the bell rang to pay off, and they put up 1850 after Japalac to win. That meant he paid less than even money on a 10 lira bet. We went to the bar under the grandstand and had a whiskey and soda apiece. We ran into a couple of Italians we knew, and McAdams, the vice consul, and they came up with us when we joined the girls. The Italians were full of manners, and McAdams talked to Catherine while we went down to bet again. Mr. Myers was standing near the pari-mutuel. Ask him what he played, I said to Crowell. What are you on, Mr. Myers? Crowell asked. Myers took out his program and pointed to the number 5 with his pencil. Do you mind if we play him too? Crowell asked. Go ahead, but don't tell my wife I gave it to you. Will you have a drink? I asked. No thanks, I never drink. We put 100 lyre on number 5 to win and 100 to place, and then had another whiskey and soda apiece. I was feeling very good, and we picked up a couple more Italians, who each had a drink with us, and went back to the girls. These Italians were also very mannered and matched manners with the 2 we had collected before. In a little while, no one could sit down. I gave the tickets to Catherine. What horse is it? I don't know. Mr. Myers' choice. Don't you even know the name? No. You can find it on the program. Number 5, I think. You have touching faith, she said. The number 5 won but did not pay anything. Mr. Myers was angry. You have to put up 200 lyre to make 20, he said. 12 lyre for 10. It's not worth it. My wife lost 20 lyre. I'll go down with you, Catherine said to me. The Italians all stood up. We went downstairs and out to the paddock. Do you like this? Catherine asked. Yes, I guess so. I guess I do. It's all right, I suppose, she said. But, darling, I can't stand to see so many people. We don't see many. No, but those Myers and the man from the bank with his wife and daughters. He cashes my sight drafts, I said. Yes. But someone else would if he didn't. Those last 4 boys were awful. We can't stay out here and watch the race from the fence. We can stay out here and watch the race from the fence. That will be lovely. And, darling, let's back a horse we've never heard of and that Mr. Myers won't be backing. All right. We backed a horse named Light for Me that finished 4th in a field of 5. We leaned on the fence and watched the horses go by. Their hoofs were thudding as they went past, and saw the mountains off in the distance and Milan beyond the trees and the fields. I feel so much cleaner, Catherine said. The horses were coming back through the gate, wet and sweating, the jockeys quieting them and riding up to dismount under the trees. Wouldn't you like a drink? We could have one out here and see the horses. I'll get them, I said. The boy will bring them, Catherine said. She put her hand up, and the boy came out from the pagoda bar beside the stables. We sat down at a round iron table. Don't you like it better when we're alone? Yes, I said. I felt very lonely when they were all there. It's grand here, I said. Yes, it's really a pretty course. It's nice. Don't let me spoil your fun, darling. I'll go back whenever you want. No, I said. We'll stay here and have our drink. Then we'll go down and stand at the water jump for the steeplechase. You're all awfully good to me, she said. After we had been alone a while, we were glad to see the others again. We had a good time. Bit of a bold spot. Chapter 21. In September, the first cool nights came. Then the days were cool, and the leaves on the trees in the park began to turn color, and we knew the summer was gone. The fighting at the front went very badly, and they could not take San Gabriel. The fighting on the Benciza Plateau was over, and by the middle of the month, the fighting for San Gabriel was about over too. They could not take it. The Tory was gone back to the front. The horses were gone to Rome, and there was no more racing. Crowell had gone to Rome too, to be sent back to America. There were riots twice in the town against the war, and bad rioting in Turin. A British major at the club told me the Italians had lost 150,000 men on the Benziza Plateau and on San Gabriel. He said they had lost 40,000 on the Carso besides. We had a drink and he talked. He said the fighting was over for the year down here and that the Italians had bitten off more than they could chew. He said the offensive in Flanders was going to the bad. If they killed men as they did this fall, the Allies would be cooked in another year. He said we were all cooked, but we were all right as long as we did not know it. We were all cooked. The thing was not to recognize it. The last country to realize they were cooked would win the war. We had another drink. Was I on somebody's staff? No. He was. It was all balls. We were alone in the club, sitting back in one of the big leather sofas. His boots were smoothly polished, dull leather. They were beautiful boots. He said it was all balls. They thought only in divisions and manpower. They all squabbled about divisions and only killed them when they got them. They were all cooked. The Germans won the victories. By God, they were soldiers. The old Hun was a soldier. But they were cooked too. We were all cooked. I asked him about Russia. He said they were cooked already. I'd soon see they were cooked. Then the Austrians were cooked too. If they got some Hun divisions, they could do it. Did he think they would attack this fall? Of course they would. The Italians were cooked. Everybody knew they were cooked. The old Hun would come down through the Trentino and cut the railway at Vicenza. And then where would the Italians be? They tried that in 16, I said. Not with Germans. Yes, I said. But they probably wouldn't do that, he said. It was too simple. They'd try something complicated and get royally cooked. I had to go, I said. I had to get back to the hospital. Good boy, he said, then cheerily. Every sort of luck. There was a great contrast between his world pessimism and personal cheeriness. I stopped at a barber shop and was shaved and went home to the hospital. My leg was as well as it would get for a long time. I had been up for examination 3 days before. There were still some treatments to take before my course at the hospital. Maggiore had finished, and I walked along the side street, practicing not limping. An old man was cutting silhouettes under an arcade. I stopped to watch him. 2 girls were posing, and he cut their silhouettes together, snipping very fast and looking at them, his head on the one side. The girls were giggling. He showed me the silhouettes before he pasted them on white paper and handed them to the girls. They're beautiful, he said. How about you, Tenente? The girls went away looking at their silhouettes and laughing. They were nice-looking girls. One of them worked in the wine shop across from the hospital. All right, I said. Take your cap off. No, with it on. It will not be so beautiful, the old man said. But he brightened. It will be more military. He snipped away at the black papers, then separated the two thicknesses and pasted the profiles on a card and handed them to me. How much? That's all right, he waved his hand. I just made them for you. Please. I brought out some coppers. For pleasure. No, I did them for a pleasure. Give them to your girl. Many thanks until we meet. Until I see thee. I went on to the hospital. There were some letters, an official one, and some others. I was to have 3 weeks convalescent leave and then return to the front. I read it over carefully. Well, that was that. The convalescent leave started October 4th when my course was finished. 3 weeks was 21 days. That made October 25th. I told them I would not be in and went to the restaurant a little way up the street from the hospital for supper and read my letters and the Corriere della Sera at the table. There was a letter from my grandfather containing family news, patriotic encouragement, a draft for $200, and a few clippings. A dull letter from the priest at our mess, a letter from a man I knew who was flying with the French and had gotten in with a wild gang and was telling about it, and a note from Rinaldi asking me how long I was going to skulk in Milano and what was all the news. He wanted me to bring him phonograph records and enclosed a list. I drank a small bottle of Chianti with the meal. Had a coffee afterward with a glass of cognac. Finished the paper. Put my letters in my pocket. Left the paper on the table with the tip and went out. In my room at the hospital, I undressed, put on pajamas and a dressing gown, pulled down the curtains on the door that opened onto the balcony, and sitting up in bed, read Boston papers from a pile Mrs. Mayers had left for her boys at the hospital. The Chicago White Sox were winning the American League pennant, and the New York Giants were leading the National League. Babe Ruth was a pitcher then, playing for Boston. The papers were dull, the news was local and stale, and the war news was all old. The American news was all training camps. I was glad I wasn't in a training camp. Baseball news was all I could read, and I did not have the slightest interest in it. A number of papers together made it impossible to read with interest. It was not very timely, but I read at it for a while. I wondered if America really got into the war, if they would close down the major leagues. They probably wouldn't. There was still racing in Milan. and the war could not be much worse. They had stopped racing in France. That was where our horse Japalac came from. Catherine was not due on duty until 9 o'clock. I heard her passing along the floor when she first came on duty, and once saw her pass in the hall. She went to several other rooms and finally came into mine. "I'm late, darling," she said. "There was a lot to do. How are you?" I told her about my papers and the leave. "That's lovely," she said. "Where do you want to go?" "Nowhere. I want to stay here." "That's silly. You pick a place to go and I'll come too." "How will you work it?" "I don't know, but I will." "You're pretty wonderful." "No, I'm not. But life isn't hard to manage when you've nothing to lose." "How do you mean?" "Nothing. I was only thinking how small obstacles seem that were that once how small obstacles seemed that once were so big. I should think it might be hard to manage. No, it won't, darling. If necessary, I'll simply leave, but it won't come to that. Where should we go? I don't care. Anywhere you want. Anywhere we don't know people. Don't you care where we go? No, I'll like any place. She seemed upset and taut. What's the matter, Catherine? Nothing. Nothing's the matter. Yes, there is. No, nothing. Really, nothing. I know there is. Tell me, darling, you can tell me. It's nothing. Tell me. I don't want to. I'm afraid I'll make you unhappy or worry you. No, it won't. You're sure? It doesn't worry me, but I'm afraid to worry you. It won't if it doesn't worry you. I don't want to tell. Tell it. Do I have to? Yes. I'm going to have a baby, darling. It's almost 3 months along. You're not worried, are you? Please, please don't. You mustn't worry. All right. Is it all right? Of course. I did everything. I took everything, but it didn't make any difference. I'm not worried. I couldn't help it, darling, and I haven't worried about it. You mustn't worry or feel badly. I only worry about you. That's it. That's what you mustn't do. People have babies all the time. Everybody has babies. It's a natural thing. You're pretty wonderful. No, I'm not. But you mustn't mind, darling. I'll try and not make trouble for you. I know I've made trouble now, but haven't I been a good girl until now? You never knew it, did you? No. It will all be like that. You simply mustn't worry. I can see you're worrying. Stop it. Stop it right away. Wouldn't you like a drink, darling? I know a drink always makes you feel cheerful. No, I feel cheerful, and you're pretty wonderful. No, I'm not. But I'll fix everything to be together if you pick out a place for us to go. It ought to be lovely in October. We'll have a lovely time, darling, and I'll write you every day while you're at the front. Where will you be? I don't know yet, but somewhere splendid. I'll look after all that. We were quiet a while and did not talk. Catherine was sitting on the bed, and I was looking at her, but we did not touch each other. We were apart when someone comes into a room and people are self conscious. We were apart as when someone comes into a room and people are self conscious. She put out her hand and took mine. You aren't angry, are you, darling? No. And you don't feel trapped? Maybe a little, but not by you. I didn't mean by me. You mustn't be stupid. I meant trapped at all. You always feel trapped biologically. She went away a long she went away a long way without stirring or removing her hand. Always isn't a pretty word. I'm sorry. It's all right. But you see, I've never had a baby, and I've never even loved anyone, and I've tried to be the way you wanted, and you talk about always. I could cut off my tongue, I offered. Oh, darling, she came back from wherever she had been. You mustn't mind me. We were both together again, and the self consciousness was gone. We really are the same one, and we mustn't misunderstand on purpose. We won't. But people do. They love each other and they misunderstand on purpose and they fight, and then suddenly they aren't the same one. We won't fight. We mustn't. Because there's only us two, and in the world, there's all the rest of them. If anything comes between us, we are gone, and then they have us. Then they have us. They won't get us, I said, because you're too brave. Nothing ever happens to the brave. They die, of course, but only once. I don't know who said that. The coward dies 1,000 deaths, the brave but one. Of course, who said that? Who said it? I don't know. He was probably a coward, she said. He knew a great deal about cowards, but nothing about the brave. The brave dies perhaps 2,000 deaths if he's intelligent. He simply doesn't mention them. I don't know. It's hard to see inside the head of the brave. Yes, that's how they keep that way. You're an authority. You're right, darling. That was deserved. You're brave. No, she said, but I would like to be. I'm not, I said. I know where I stand. I've been out long enough to know. I'm like a ball player that bats 230 and knows he's no better. What is a ball player that bats 230? It's awfully impressive. It's not. It means he's a mediocre hitter in baseball. But still a hitter. She prodded me. I guess we're both conceited, I said. But you are brave. No, but I hope to be. We're both brave, I said. And I'm very brave when I've had a drink. We're splendid people, Catherine said. She went over to the armoire and brought me the cognac and a glass. Have a drink, darling, she said. You've been awfully good. I don't really want one. Take one. All right. And I poured the water glass, a third full of cognac, and drank it off. That was very big, she said. I know brandy is for heroes, but you shouldn't exaggerate. Where will we live after the war? In an old people's home, probably, she said. For 3 years, I looked forward very childishly to the war ending at Christmas. But now I look forward to when our son will be a lieutenant commander. Maybe he'll be a general. If it's an 100 years war, he'll have time to try both of the services. Don't you want a drink? No, it always makes you happy, darling, and it only makes me dizzy. Didn't you ever drink brandy? No, darling. I'm a very old-fashioned wife. I reached down to the floor for the bottle and poured another drink. I'd better go to have a look at your compatriots, Catherine said. Perhaps you'll read the papers until I come back. Do you have to go? An hour later. All right. Now, I'll come back later. I'll have finished the papers, I said.